Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our July Early Childhood State Advisory Council meeting. I'm Morgan Crossman, the Executive Director for Building Bright Futures, which is Vermont's Early Childhood State Advisory Council and Vermont's Early Childhood Data and Policy Center. We are excited to have you this afternoon for our meeting. We have a really big agenda today. First, we're going to be hearing from some of our regional council partners. So first from Ali Jang about some of the top priorities that our regional councils have worked to address and will continue to work to address over the next 2 years, as well as the process that we go through with those partners to identify and then move those into fruition. We'll also hear from Darla Senecal, who's going to be sharing some examples of this work from the Bennington Regional Council. In the second part of today's meeting, we are going to be joined by the Creative Discourse Group. So specifically, Sue and Krista are here, so welcome. And they are going to be helping us launch the VECAP 2030 update process and learn all about the priorities for how we're thinking about engagement in that process over the next year. Another component of the work that we're going to be doing together today is exploring all of the different strategies that we can use to center equity and justice in that VCAP 2030, as well as the steps that Building Bright Futures is taking as an organization to strengthen the practices that we have and really supporting the early childhood system more broadly and providing leadership around diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And then finally, as always in our state advisory council meetings, we are really prioritizing building alignment and collaboration across all different sections of our network. So our regional councils, the state advisory council, and our strategic plan committee. So thank you for being a part of our meeting today. And before we transition into some of our roll call and business activities, I do just want to give a couple of updates around housekeeping. So if you are joining us today, please do an introduction in the chat bar and let us know if you're a state advisory council member and where you are showing up in the state. We are asking all of our state advisory council members to do your best to keep your video on during today's webinar. And for any of those that are joining us, we ask you to keep your video off during the periods when there's specific state advisory council discussion and business. That is not the case during our small group section. We really do want folks to be as active and engaged as possible. Before I transition to Elisa, just a quick note of gratitude for everybody who's been working so hard on flood recovery, and just a quick heartfelt thoughts and prayers with all of our partners across the state and our community members and kids and families who have been impacted by flooding again this year. Elisa, I'll transition it to you.
Thanks, Morgan, and thanks for sharing that sentiment. I'm going to do my best to hear, but the lawn is being mowed across the street, the rooster is crowing, and the dog is barking. So see how I do. Good to see you all. We're just going to do a quick roll call. Again, I'm Elisa Stolberg. I'm the Director for Family and Child Health at the Health Department, and I am the public co-chair for the SAC. So folks, if you could just unmute and say hello, we'll go from there. So Janet McLaughlin.
Hi there, Janet McLaughlin, Deputy Commissioner of the Child Development Division within the Department for Children and Families.
Thanks, Janet. Cheryl Wilcox. Okay, Meg Portella or Tammy Bates.
Everyone, I'm here for Meg Porcella, and I'm with the Vermont Agency of Education.
Thanks, Tammy. Susanna Davis. Jessica Wittner. It's a quiet Monday. Monica Ogilvy. Carly Tebow.
Hi there, Carly Tebow, Family Services. Typically, Erica Radke, the Deputy Commissioner of Family Services, sits in these meetings, but I will be sitting in place for her as the Family Services rep moving forward. And I don't have roosters or lawn mowing, but I do have a toddler who was sent home sick today, who is currently playing very loudly behind me, and will likely make an appearance. But I was so excited for my first meeting, I didn't want to miss it. So apologies in advance if there's any noise on my end if I'm unmuted.
Thank you, Carly. Now to our legislators, Representative Jessica Brumstead. Okay, and then moving on to our private at-large members, my co-chair, Flor Diaz-Smith.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here, Vermont School Boards Association.
Thanks, Flor. Caroline Godden from the Parent-Child Center Network.
There we go. I don't even have to introduce myself. Elisa did it. Parent-Child Center Network.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol. Sharon Harrington. I've lost Erica McLaughlin.
Erica McLaughlin here from the Vermont Principals Association.
Danielle Mitchell. Dr. Deb Hartswick. Amber Houston.
Hello, I'm here, Amber Houston, parent representative.
Thanks, Amber. Libby Dalian. And our non-voting members, Kendall Smith from the governor's office.
I've seen a couple people arrive since we started doing roll calls. Susanna Davis just jumped in. I think Christy Swenson is here. And Dr. Deb Hartswick also just jumped on.
Thanks, Beth.
And
And
Becca.
you skipped me, but I'm here.
Oh,
I'm,
I'm sorry. I don't know how I did that.
That's
Go ahead,
okay.
Becca.
I'm Becca Webb. I'm a Universal Pre-K coordinator for 10 supervisory units down the middle of the state.
Thank you. Oh, you know what, Becca? You're on our regrets list. So I'm glad to actually see you here. So I think maybe we had you on vacation.
I'm going to be on the regrets list for August, but I don't think there's a meeting.
Terrific. Thanks, Becca. And noting just a few other folks, not Becca, who are sending their regrets. Renee Kelly from the Head Start Collab, Senator Ruth Hardy, Eddie Gale from the A.D. Henderson Foundation, Kiona Heath from the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and Dimitri Gardner, who's our business rep. I think that's it, and I'm going to pass it off to Flor.
Hi, everyone. We have very little business for our State Advisory Council. I'm looking for a motion to approve our May minutes. Could somebody make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from May.
Thank you. And that was Carol, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And can I have a second, please?
I
I
can
can
second
second,
this.
Janet.
Ooh. Okay, there were two at the same time. Can you just say your name? Because everybody, I saw Janice's hand up and then I heard two voices. Can somebody who was the second?
This is Janet. I'm happy to be the second.
Okay, okay. So Janet,
Does that
second.
work?
And then any discussion? Seeing no hands up, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Right? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it, so that we have our minutes, and I'm going to pass it on to Anna. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Flor. I wanted to just briefly share some reminders about our annual policy recommendation process while we have all of you gathered in this virtual space. So currently we are really kind of in the process of developing the policy recommendations of the BBF network with VECAP committees, with other early childhood partners, and the BBF team kind of playing that supporting and convening role. So our team is working on kind of that initial drafting process, and really want you all to consider yourself invited to be part of that process. You are welcome to do so by getting involved in VECAP committees, regional councils, reaching out directly to myself. I will put my email in the chat, as well as a link to our policy recommendation webpage that kind of describes the process in more depth. But the next kind of formal opportunity for the SAC to be involved in the process will be at our September in-person meeting, at which point we'll be presenting for the first time the full slate of the draft policy recommendation process of the draft policy recommendations. And then from there, there'll be about another month before the October SAC meeting, at which point we'll ask folks to vote on those recommendations. So again, I'll put my information in the chat. Please reach out to me if you have any ideas or want kind of more concrete support getting involved in the process. I'm happy to play that role. And we're looking forward to sharing kind of everything that the network has been working on over the past couple of months, through that slate in September. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Ali, who's going to highlight more about BBF's Regional Council priority setting process.
All right. Thank you so much, Anna, and hello, everyone. My name is Ali Jang. You can hear me very well, right? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yep. Thanks for having us. And my name is Ali Jang. I am a BBF regional manager. I cover Chittenden and Franklin Grand Isle regions. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Regional Council priority setting process. And maybe we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. As you can see, this is a Regional Council priority map, meaning that the priorities were already identified. And you also may notice that it has changed on a yearly basis to a biannually now, instead of just 2024 to 2025. Now it's 2024 to 2026. And this is new. You also may notice that access to basic need, child and family mental health, as well as building resilience in children and families are common regional priorities that were identified across multiple regions. So I think they represent 50 and also 45% of the regional priorities that were identified. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Yep, this is the Regional Council managers team. So you can see I cover Chittenden and Franklin Grand Isle. You will hear from my colleague Darla Senecal soon, and other regional managers also doing similar work across the state. And we are a very compact team. And for this year, we worked very well in collaboration together. Maybe the next slide. Yep. Yes, thank you. And as you can see, Building Bright Futures State Advisory Council and network infrastructure is charged by Act 104, Title 33, Chapter 46, to use evidence and data to monitor the system of services and provide the mechanism to support accountability. That's at the basis of what we try to achieve as regional managers and also the Regional Council. You know that we use the 12 regions throughout Vermont that align the Agency of Human Services District. The councils bring together community members committed to young children and families. We are very grateful to be working with so many different people with so many expertise. The councils also are guided by the state regional action plan and identify annual priorities, action based on community needs and gaps. And that's what we will talk about a little bit later. We also, as regional manager, also our council, we advise the BBF State Advisory Council, SAC, on opportunities to strengthen both local and statewide system of care, health, education. We also, as regional council, we meet on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, not to even count the leadership team meetings and other meetings that we host on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. Thank you. Next slide. Yep. It will be important to talk a little bit about the background as to how we identified the priorities this year. Winter 2023, Beth Truzensky, the Deputy Director, tasked the regional manager to generate a cross-regional action plan with a goal of identifying more collaboration opportunities amongst regional managers and regional councils. This was new to BBF this year. This action included reviewing the process in which we used to identify the regional council priorities. The regional council team worked very hard in collaboration with Beth and also Kate, who is a network manager, to combine some of the 12 priorities, issue description, and identify new ones. We will mention them a little bit. Regional managers also work alongside Beth and Kate and to identify the schedules, the communication, the voting process, and we use idea boards and also the follow-ups in order to hear from more people. Maybe the next slide, please. Thank you. And as I stated earlier, instead of 1 year, now we are moving on a biannually basis for many reasons. But BBF facilitated the process across the 12 regions, and each and every single meeting was attended by Beth Truzensky, the Deputy Director, and those meetings took place during the months of April and May of 2023. The process was designed to gather input and prioritize the most pressing regional priorities for council investment in the coming years. We can say that over 130 people participated in the regional council priority setting. And this resulted to an updated regional council priority map that I showed earlier that guided the council work and resources over the next 2 years. Council agendas, strategizing by stakeholders, regional council budget, leveraging expertise, and from the BBF early childhood grant process, as you can say, the VECF. And I think the next slide, maybe. Yep. As I stated earlier, we used to have 12 priorities across the state, but we worked very hard to try to combine them. And we identified one new priority, which was promote better literacy outcome for children and families. But it went very, very well. And we can say that the regional managers, including Beth Truzensky and Kate, we worked very well and very hard in order to get us to where we are here, right here today. Maybe I'll pass it now to my colleague Darla to talk about one example of regional priorities and what they have done recently. Thank you for having us. And if you have any questions, I'll be here today. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Ali. I am Darla Senecal. I'm the regional manager and I cover Addison, Rutland, and Bennington County. And I'm going to talk to you today about the Bennington Regional Council and how we used this priority setting last year and what we did with one of the actions we took to help move things forward. So in 2023, the top issues for Bennington, the top two that we identified were building resilience in children, families, and communities, and early childhood workforce development. So through discussions at the council table and the quality task force, which I'll explain what the quality task force is in just a moment, retention of staff and how to best support employees experiencing vicarious trauma and to combat burnout were identified as urgent needs within the region. The Quality Task Force is a subcommittee of the Bennington Council, and that is focused on professional development and training within the region. So there are some great folks. Many of you at this meeting today are part of that particular group. So hello, Quality Task Force. One of the members, Lori Metcalf, had mentioned that she had taken a class with Cassie Gillespie from Vermont Higher Education Collaborative, and that the class that she took was similar to the issues that what we were seeing in our region. And so it was decided that we would reach out to Cassie and see if she had availability and felt that she was the right fit for the best person to help us move forward with a training, a workshop, or what that might look like. And at that same time that we were talking about this, also my colleague Courtney Hillhouse was having similar conversations at her council tables. So Courtney and I started talking. We ended up bringing it back to the regional managers in one of the bi-monthly meetings that Ali mentioned earlier. And it became really clear that mental health, that staff mental health was a priority across the state. It was an issue happening at every table and a concern that everyone was looking for an answer for. So it ended up that Lori and Courtney and myself did meet with Cassie, went through our thoughts, what we were hoping for from a workshop. And she very ably put together a workshop geared toward early care and learning professionals. So we were really pleased to be able to do that with her. She actually gave us 3 options. We chose Beyond Self-Care. The subtitle for that class was I Can't Self-Help My Way Out of This. So that class really, it struck a nerve as soon as we put it up and decided that regional managers would sponsor this class free for everyone in the state of Vermont that attends our councils, and we even opened it up to those beyond our council walls. That this was something that folks, it really resonated with folks. We had over 70 people sign up for this evening class. We were also able to offer Northern Lights credit for the class for those who needed it. So like I said, this was a note that really struck across the board, and people were really looking for a toolkit, if you will, that they could walk away with and go back to their staff and say, these are the things that I can help you with. And one of the things we learned in that class was that modeling that behavior that you want to see in your staff, which means taking time off when you have it, is incredibly important. So again, like I said, over 70 people signed up for the class, over 40 people applied for the credit. And our colleague Linda Miknowitz took care of all of that paperwork for us. So shout out to Linda for that. But it turned out to be, again, not only just a regional issue, but it really resonated across the state. And I think this is a wonderful example of not only a regional council coming together to address something, but then recognizing that it really was something broader, and that as a team of regional managers, we could pool our resources and offer this for free to folks across the state. And then there are, like I said, 2 other workshops in our toolkit that we can come back to when we get ourselves back together after the summer, and we can decide if we want to move forward and offer another training. So a wonderful example of not only a council addressing regional issues, but also the regional managers working together. Thanks for having me in today.
Thanks, Darla and Ali. Appreciate sharing. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions from SAC members initially around the regional council priority setting process, or the example that you heard. Shout out to those folks who attend both SAC and regional councils. It's really great to have you at both tables and to build that continuity and to be able to kind of share what you're hearing at the regional level. And again, sometimes there is an appropriate region and possible regional response. And sometimes our action is about elevating those gaps and needs, as Ali and Darla shared. So really appreciate kind of that's the essence of the network, right? Is being able to capture, we are continuously identifying needs, responding regionally when appropriate, when there are resources, and communicating those through the network to make statewide action when that is needed. Any other questions or comments about this process? Well, we are thrilled to have an updated map and the work that the councils are doing as they kind of chart their strategy forward. So take that into account as you are continuing with your work, and invite you to engage with the councils and utilize them. It's really a robust network that responds to multiple needs. So it is very often that SAC members and other partners come to us and say, we really want to connect with folks. What's the best way? And the councils really are often the best way to connect with a lot of regional partners to understand what's going on. I see heads nodding, so that's great. Okay, so moving on. I would like to hand this over to our colleagues with the Creative Discourse Group. So we have Sue McCormick and Krista Sringo, who are going to help us as we move from talking about regional councils and priority setting to kind of other statewide strategic planning with the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan and the work that we're doing to update that plan for 2030. So Sue and Krista, you're on, and I do have small groups queued up when you are ready.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue McCormick, co-founder of the Creative Discourse Group, along with my partner, Dr. Nadia DeBose, and we're just really happy to be here today. Our business, the real short version of what we do is we help communities and organizations learn how to share power with the people that they serve. And we're really committed, especially during this time of disruption, to this idea that Vermont becomes a place where people's racial identity, sexual orientation, gender, ability, status, level of wealth, all of those characteristics really don't interfere with people's ability to be successful and thrive in this world. And in our experience, we also really embrace the idea of scholar Heather McGee about the solidarity dividend. And we have seen that when people across difference come together to try to solve collective problems, the solutions often benefit everybody involved. So again, happy to be here. And if you could go to the next slide. I want to share with you our team that is working to support Building Bright Futures and the network, myself and my co-founder Nadia, and then we have some wonderful associates. And hopefully many of you have talked to some of these folks or will over the course of our work together. Next slide, please. The focus for our time with you today is we want to offer you a very brief overview about our work with Building Bright Futures and the network. We want to talk about the VECAP launch with a particular focus on network engagement. And then we're going to break out into groups to gather your ideas and feedback. We're really excited about the strength of the network and the opportunities for you all to work collaboratively to help this launch go well and be meaningful, and especially center voices of families and children that are often marginalized and excluded. So that's our time together. Next slide, please. And I wanted to offer briefly a few words about the purpose of our work with Building Bright Futures. So we are going to, and the network. So our job, if you could go back one, that would be great. Our job is to provide project management and support network engagement for the VECAP update process. And then to also help be a guide so that systems change is being guided by diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the overall intention here is to do our best to ensure that families and children are centered in decision-making, and that all of the work that you're doing really honors and lifts up their voices, and to make sure that Vermont is using an equity lens to monitor and update the VECAP. And now we're ready for the next slide. We thought it would be helpful to share with you kind of our working definition of what an equity lens is, so we're all on the same page, and we'd love to hear your feedback about this. There's probably a lot of ways to talk about this. I'm just going to take a minute and actually read this so we can all kind of hear this together. So an equity lens can be thought of as an inclusive process that actively centers the voices of people who are farthest from justice to help us work collaboratively to analyze the historical context, understand the impact of policies, practices, and decision-making on people who have been marginalized, and then to take actions that move systems towards justice. And with that, if you can go to the next slide, please. These are some of the activities that we are engaged with right now. We're doing a series of capacity building activities. We've been facilitating an internal equity team of Building Bright Future leaders who are engaged in shared learning and have agreed to kind of champion this work and find ways to build systems and accountability for the equity work of the team. We've conducted an internal landscape analysis. We'll be facilitating several kinds of learning opportunities for both the BBF staff and the network. And then we're going to be helping with the VECAP update. And with that, I'll turn it over to Krista to talk a little bit more about the update.
Great, thanks, Sue. You can go to the next slide, please. So my name is Krista Siringo. I'm an associate with the Creative Discourse Group, and I use she, her pronouns. And I want to first talk a little bit about this update of the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan, or the VECAP as it's known. And Building Bright Futures is really the organizing center or the hub of this process. But when you go to their website, the way that the VECAP is described is in language that speaks to this plan being collaborative, cohesive, and embodying a shared vision. The description includes phrases such as shared accountability, coordinated actions, and common goals, strategies, and language. So depending on your role, you might be thinking about the VECAP in very specific ways on a regular basis, and maybe some of you less so, but all of you here are touching that vision in one way or another. And so we're, as Sue mentioned, we're so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you all both about the update process and specifically about the network engagement so that you can envision how you might become actively engaged in that work. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little bit about the process itself, which has 4 different components. The first one, which Sue was just speaking to, really references the internal capacity building that's happening within BBF, so that this process is really led by and oriented in a way that centers equity and justice through a variety of ways, including the formation of an equity team, the leadership coaching and capacity building, the internal landscape analysis, and then workshops and trainings that will be offered to support equitable and family community engagement. The next component is the formation of a VECAP advisory committee, and that group has convened and has had its first meeting already. And this is a group made up of a subgroup of the SAC and some BBF staff members. And their charge is really to lead and champion this update process, making sure that priorities related to equity and inclusion are implemented. So specifically, they'll be adding their voice and expertise to the network engagement design. They'll be helping to analyze and prioritize feedback and helping to shape the format and content of the updated report. So this group, as I said, has met once already this month and will be meeting again on July 30th. And we're really grateful for their help with this process. The third step is to design and implement a process that is going to connect with people throughout the early childhood system, especially those people with marginalized identities who are often farthest from justice. In order to update the VECAP in a way that centers equity and inclusion, it should be informed by people who are living the system and experiencing directly how it works and doesn't work in their lives every day. And so this network engagement design will be built upon those principles, as well as building on and incorporating existing data, such as the 2022 Family Needs Assessment and the monitoring of the current VECAP. And then the fourth component of the process is to develop a draft report to present at a VECAP summit in May. And this is going to be a process that will be informed by the landscape analysis that has already happened, as well as the network engagement. In addition to that, the intention is to build on the 4 goals included in the VECAP 2020, to incorporate existing data, to include strategies for implementation, and to address accountability. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sue, and we can go to the next slide. And she's going to talk about our initial thinking about the network engagement component of this process.
Thanks so much, Krista. This next part is really designed to help you all have an informed conversation with each other. And so because of that, we're going to try to keep this pretty brief and high level so that we really leave plenty of time for that small group work. So our intention here is to share our initial thinking about ways to engage with the network. And I want to mention that these ideas are influenced by findings from the landscape analysis that we recently completed, and also the very recent Family Voices and Leadership panel that was hosted by the Families and Communities Committee. So one of the things that we found in our landscape analysis is there really is a deep commitment, experience, and infrastructure in place to engage with people who are impacted by the system. And I think Ali and his colleague did a good job earlier talking about the regional councils and the way that they are able to do their own priority setting. And so we really want to honor and build on that. The other thing that we found is a desire among the people that we talked to really continue to build and deepen relationships with families and caregivers. And we are aware that the engagement work might serve the specific purpose of the VECAP update, but we really want to think about it in that broader context of ongoing relationship building. Another finding that won't be surprising to anyone is that it is very challenging to hear from people who are furthest from justice. As we know, those are the folks who are often the least well served by our systems, that experience the most barriers. So of course, it makes sense that it's really tough to hear those voices. And then the final thing that we heard that we thought was interesting was a desire for people in the system, particularly high-level leaders, to have opportunities for really direct contact with children, families, and caregivers who use the system. And all of this has caused us to shift our thinking a little bit about what we thought our role would be in this process and what the network's role would be. And where we are right now is we think that the way that we can be most useful is to work with the advisory group, the VECAP advisory group, to design and create a range of engagement tools and then activate the network to carry out many of these activities. So I'm going to briefly share a few ideas to guide our work. Next slide, please. So as we continue to mention, appropriately so, we really want to find ways, respectful and mutually beneficial ways, to hear from people who are the most marginalized for very specific reasons. And one is that oftentimes those folks who have lived experience with the system have the best insights and some really amazing wisdom to share about the kinds of solutions that are going to actually work. 3 guiding principles that we always keep in mind, and these are very aligned with what we heard at the Family Engagement panel last week, are to center relationships, organize for inclusion, and share power. There's a lot we could talk about under each of those buckets, but for today, we'll just say that this is a helpful shorthand that we find people can come back to as we're going through and designing engagement processes to make sure that we hit all of these, and that can really help us get a good outcome. The next slide, please. Thank you. So what we'd like to suggest is an approach that combines multiple levels of engagement, from quick, low-stakes interactions to deeper conversations to immersive experiences. And this aligns again with what we heard in the Family Engagement panel, which is the idea of engaging people where they're at along a spectrum of activities. And again, we think that these 3 buckets can help us in our design work make sure that we are addressing these different levels. And I'd like to just get a little personal for a minute here, and I'm just going to share a couple of specific examples from our own experience so that when you're talking in small groups later, it might help with your own thinking. So let's go to the next slide, please. So here's an example of a quick, fun interaction that we did with in Essex Junction, Vermont. We got a camera, a whiteboard, and some markers, and we went all around town and asked people to talk about what they cared about the community. They wrote it on the board, and we took their picture. And we had hundreds of these images all around town. And this was easy and quick. People loved it. They saw that their voices were heard. We used the data from this to actually inform the design of some deeper engagement work, and also as an opportunity to invite people to participate in another level of engagement. Next slide, please. From that initial work, we held a series of neighborhood conversations in living rooms all around town and in libraries. These could happen at child care centers and child parent centers. And we created a meeting in a box, or you could call it a party in a box, where we had refreshments and all the materials that facilitators would need to hold these conversations. And this could be a conversation that lasts 10 minutes up to several hours. And these conversations, we have found, actually create opportunities for people to offer collective ideas about how to solve problems. The first level of engagement I shared, that's great for collecting individual feedback. This is really good for surfacing collective thinking. And the other thing that often happens in this kind of engagement activity is that people find their voice and step forward into other levels of leadership. And then the final exploration we wanted to talk about was this idea of an immersive experience. And I wanted to share one example from the Vermont Leadership Institute, which some of you have gone through. One of the days of that experience is a full day immersion in a prison in Vermont. And I had the opportunity to go through this as an associate and also when I was directing that program. And what I can say was it was a truly transformative experience. It was very different to be in that space, to talk with the people who live there and work there, than it is to read policy reports and recommendations about what are the issues and what needs to be addressed. And so we are curious about whether there are opportunities to have immersive experiences with families, shadowing families. We're curious about whether we could create some immersive experiences for families or caregivers to spend a day shadowing policymakers, perhaps in the legislature or other referral centers, places where people are accepting calls from people looking for resources. And again, the idea of this is to create opportunities for direct connection between leaders and people who are living the system, and to, in some cases, create transformational experiences. We know that internal transformation is an incredible and powerful catalyst for leaders to create policy and systems change. So with those few examples, I'm going to turn it back over to Krista to set us up for our small group work.
Great, thank you, Sue. And we can go to the next slide, please. So here is where you get to be a little bit more active, and we're going to put you to work. As we said before, we just are so grateful to have this opportunity to tap into the collective wisdom of this group and really envision how opportunities could be developed that really makes sense based on the roles you play and the seats that you sit in. We really feel like it's very important that engagement is informed by those folks who are sitting closest with families who are receiving services or maybe having barriers to receive those services. So we'd like to give you the chance to think about your role, your capacity, your organization or department, and how you might participate in this network engagement and ideas you might have. So we're going to give you about 3 minutes to jot down some of your thoughts in response to this question. How will you and your organization participate in this engagement? And if we could go to the next slide, we'll keep this up during the reflection time so that you can be thinking about some of those specific examples that Sue referred to as you think about ways that you can contribute. So I'm going to set the timer, and then after we have this individual reflection time, we'll set up to go into small group discussion. Okay, that is the 3-minute mark. So hopefully you had a chance to reflect a bit on this question. And if we can go to the next slide, we are going to now shift into some breakout rooms and give you a chance to talk together about this idea of the engagement process and the ways that you might be able to participate in that. And so, Sue, are you able to drop into the chat the notes document? So we are going to ask you when you get into your breakout rooms to do a couple of things. First, we'd like you to introduce yourselves. Next, we'd like you to ask somebody to record notes onto a shared document that we will put into the chat. And then we're going to ask everyone to take a turn sharing one thought about how they see themselves, their organization, or their department participating in this process. And then if there's time, We'll give you about 15 minutes for this discussion. And then if there's time, there's space to add additional thoughts or ideas. So in the notes document, you'll see these instructions so that you don't need to keep them in your head right now. And you'll also see that same description of the different types of engagement opportunities. So we will make sure that that is in the chat. Looks like Sue added that, great. And so we'll give you 15 minutes. And then when we come back, we'll hear some ideas that folks would like to share and capture our thinking. So Beth, I think we are ready to move folks into breakout rooms.
Okay, here we go. I'll open up the rooms. Folks will have a pop-up and can accept that and move into the room. We have groups of mostly threes.
Great.
And Krista, can you tell me again how long you want folks?
15 minutes, please. Are you able to keep the time?
Yes,
Great.
I will.
Thank you.
So I did put you in a group as well, Krista, if you wanted to go.
I just wanted to check in. So happy to join groups if you think that that's what would be helpful.
I put you in a group because I thought it might be helpful to listen to the conversation. So
that sounds great. Okay, good. And anything else you want to say for us to be keeping in mind before we come back together?
Nothing. Yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Can you tell, Beth, does it look like we're all back here?
People are making their way. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll give it a minute for folks to get settled back in.
Yeah, looks like we're back.
Okay, great. All right. So I hope that folks had a really great opportunity to connect about your own thinking and to hear some of the thinking of your discussion partners. We'd love to take a few moments to invite folks to share their a key idea or something that they heard in their small group that, although it might be captured on our shared Google Doc, that you thought it would be helpful to raise up verbally into this space. So feel free to just unmute yourself if that's not too unruly.
I don't mind going. I think one of the things we talked about, and I was with Lynn and Wendy, was sort of the different ways we solicit and try to engage families and caregivers in our communities. And so a number of the things we talked about, the farm to family, now I'm trying to find it on the slide because it's jumping all around because everyone's still typing. Farm to family events, play groups. We talked about, Head Start has a robust system for pulling parents and caregivers together. Is that a place? I can't find the list now, it's gone. But essentially there are so many opportunities, parent-child centers, child cares, where we engage families all the time, that some of that's low stakes, but it could build into more deeper conversations, potentially immersive experiences once you build those relationships up with families and caregivers and those that you're supporting. And just, there are a lot of those sort of low stakes opportunities, and how do we build off of all of those to create deeper conversations? We also, the other thing, sorry, one more thing we talked about, maybe I threw it out there, was just like, how do we make it clear to parents, caregivers, sort of like what we're hoping for, what we're looking for, to make it clear? Because I think, with marginalized voices and people, sometimes there's that, I'm not going to get involved because I'm too nervous about this. So if we make expectations clear, what we're looking for, and could there be stipends? Is there some way to compensate people for their time and for what they put into it? So.
Thanks, Carol. Those are some really great, important points. And you're reminding me of the principle of moving at the speed of trust, which may or may not have been raised in the family voices and leadership conversation. And in a way, this notion of low stakes engagement is almost a misnomer, because it really is about finding places where relationships already exist and finding opportunities to cultivate those in a way that encourages folks to keep sharing their voice at whatever capacity or comfort level they're at. And thinking about mutual reciprocity, whether that's compensation or a particular skill or need that's being met. So thank you for that. Other thoughts or ideas that folks wanted to share?
Go ahead, Janet.
I'll just share because I thought it was fun, but Erica McLaughlin shared about the fact that she has a therapy dog and that she has used time with a therapy dog as a time that she's gotten kids and families share lots of things while engaged with a therapy dog. I don't know, an interesting option for immersive experiences.
That's great. Thank you. Other thoughts that folks want to raise up right now?
Dr. Deb Hartswick and I were talking, and she identified kind of two different groups that come together regularly, where there could be a short presentation and kind of engagement, especially around something particular that relates to the pediatric medical community. So that was fun.
Great, thank you. So we'd like to, and if other folks want to speak up, please do. But we'd also like to.
Sorry, Krista. Flora, were you raising your hand?
I was just raising my hand because
Oh, good, great.
Not much sleep, so hopefully I'll coordinate. But we talked about it also internally. We already do some of this work at BBF, and we have that meeting with private and public partners, and maybe the idea of doing smaller groups so that we understand our roles and how we impact each other and how we make decisions for the VECAP was so making ourselves part of that is deeper understanding. And then the other thing that we talked about with Amber was for example, a simple survey through Vermont School Boards Associations. We have a lot of declining enrollment in our schools, but high need for childcare. So really understanding what that is and the opportunities that lie. And the third one was a deeper doing maybe a lunch and learn, making sure that we, and it's in the notes there, that we're able to engage with the people that are furthest removed from opportunity, but that they also understand what are best outcomes for kids. So do like a lunch and learn where you actually have childcare and food, and also for them to have a little time to learn together, and then go into having this conversations with them. So there's some more of a shared understanding because progress is slow. And I think those were Amber and I, if I missed something.
Thank you, Flora. Other ideas or thoughts that folks want to share? We'd also like to invite folks to add a word or a phrase in the chat that describes something you're taking away from this discussion, if you'd like to share that way. And we can go to the next slide with a few closing remarks. Okay. And if my time is correct, we might be giving you all back a few minutes more of your summer, which is exciting. So we'd like to just thank you again for sharing your thoughts and contributions with us. We want to invite you to think about this as the beginning of a conversation, and other people that you might reach out to add some generative ideas to this thinking so that this really is an opportunity to invite many different voices to the table to consider what effective engagement looks like. And it might really look different in different regions of the state, with different populations, in different cultures and communities. And so we want this to be relevant to the people that we are hoping to hear from. So what will happen next is that this document that we've all been working on will be shared with regional councils for additional feedback, and also with the VECAP Advisory Committee when they meet on July 30th, as we begin to hone in on our specific plan for network engagement. Sue, did you want to add any other thoughts in closing?
I just want to say that we really appreciate such an extensive brain trust of people being able to weigh in on this. And we're looking forward to drafting a design, really co-creating an engagement design for the VECAP update that incorporates a lot of your best thinking, as well as others in the system who are closer even to the day-to-day workings of the system. And we just have a lot of gratitude for you spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sue and Krista. This is great. We hope folks will continue to add to that list and add some details and contact information as we move this concept into reality. So with that, we are closing out our SAC meeting. Just a reminder that no August meeting, but our September 23rd meeting is in person in Williston at 600 Blair Park. So for those who may live a distance, we thank you for traveling. It really means a lot to be in person. So thanks all. It was great to have you, and have a great day.